quality of a Fire Emblem map can be separated into 5 different factors. Flavor, how well the map matches the story and atmosphere that it is trying to portray, and whether or not it succeeds at making you feel like you're really experiencing the story as the developers intended. Objective, what the map is asking you to do in order to finish the chapter, be it seizing, routing, escaping, or defending. Is it offering you an objective that is interesting to work towards? Replayability, you finished the chapter, now how do you feel about it? Frustrated? Relieved? Satisfied? There's any number of possible outcomes that can occur after finishing a chapter, so consider whether or not you'd enjoy playing the chapter again on a subsequent playthrough. Difficulty. Difficulty might not be an important factor for everyone, but a fair amount of players yearn to be challenged by Fire Emblem, to be given a puzzle to solve with the resources provided. Was the map that you just finished difficult in a compelling way? Enjoyability. Plain and simple, is the map fun to play? Are you having a good time whilst playing it, and if so, are you able to articulate exactly why the map is so stimulating? When all of these variables are managed effectively, what you're left with is an incredibly satisfying chapter to play through, providing a memorable experience for the player that they'll hopefully be excited to enjoy again during a second playthrough. And if you don't pay attention to this formula, what you're given is some of the worst the series has to offer. My name's Blute. Welcome to F.O.R.D.E. This chapter doesn't have an intro. And welcome back to our next episode of F.O.R.D.E. This time tackling an Engage map, a game I have been grinding up, down, left and right, and a bit diagonally as of recently, because holy fuck, Engage has been my new hyper obsession recently, but we'll get into that. You would know this is an Engage map had you solved my incredibly difficult riddle of a 7-letter anagram, of which there is only so many solutions. I'm sure you solved it. This one especially was very easy. There's some tricky ones. Acing Mafiosos, which, by the way, I fucked up for an Oasis of Magic. I missed out an A, or added an extra A, something. I fucked it up, and I apologize for that. It will never happen again, boss. I'll never fuck up the anagram again. It's the most important part of the video. Our chapter today from Tetra is Retreat, which is kind of a bland name for a chapter, if we're being perfectly honest. It's bland to the point where there is actually other chapters in the series that are called Retreat. I believe Radiant Dawn has a chapter named Retreat, and I think there's maybe one more, maybe in Thracia or something. But either way, chapter 11 from Engage. A rather interesting chapter that has a lot to talk about, so I think I'm just gonna cut the crap and just go right ahead and dive in. Starting with the flavor. It's no secret that this chapter does flavor excellently well. I know we're 4 for 4 on flavor, blah 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 blah. This chapter does flavor really, really well. The entire crux of the chapter is very, very straightforward, but it works really, really, really well. The plot of the chapter is, well, effectively up to this point you have just been steamrolling through the early game with the use of all 6 of your rings, the Marth ring and the Roy ring and the Makai ring, which is hilariously busted. All of your insanely powerful, formidable rings have effectively been carrying you for the early game, with otherwise, kind of weak to average units. And then the game does this incredibly interesting thing where it just completely pulls the carpet out from under you, just yanks it away, and just steals all of your emblems, and leaves you with literally none. Oh, okay. For reference, I'm going to be talking about this chapter as though you haven't completed any of the DLC at this point, because obviously, if you have, the flavor just gets completely shattered. When you go into chapter 11, and it goes, we're without rings, we're without hope, and then you pull out, except for this Tiki ring, and this Hector ring, and this Camilla ring, and this Robin and Crumb ring, and this Soren ring, and this Edelgard ring, it kind of just falls apart. But yeah, just being deprived of your rings really adds a great, overwhelming sensation of just defeat. You just go into this chapter feeling much weaker. And this is really empowered well, for one, the excellent track that plays in the background, which I want to say plays exclusively in Chapter 11. I believe the track is called Broken Bonds. Engage has a pretty good soundtrack, but this track especially, really sets the mood. It's a really nice, Don't Speak Her Name or a Thorn in You track. Fire Emblem does its, really, emotional tracks really, really well. And this is no different. It's an excellent track that really sets the scene. So it's really, really helped by the music, but it's also really, really helped through the gameplay perspective in the form of Veyle utilizing all of the rings against you. Now, she might not utilize them in the most efficient ways possible, but just having to deal with goobers that effectively keep on respawning due to them re-equipping Veyle re-equipping the rings onto different corrupted, really adds to the sensation that if you don't follow through with what the game is trying to tell you to do, you're going to get overwhelmed, because the enemy is very much in control. Like, up to this point, the tug of war between good and evil has been pretty much, like, always in favor of the good guys, and then at this point, the bad guys have just done a big old fucking heave towards their side, and the ball is completely in their court. And when you add the 4 hounds making their physical debut into the mix, it increases the tension even further. So, like, you genuinely feel like you're on the ropes with this chapter. It's done really, really well, and it's only really alleviated once Ivy, Zelkov, and Kagetsu show up towards the end of the chapter, which is like a really nice little like bump of hope for your units. It works really, really well. Ooh, another thing I really... This little ditty, another minor thing that I love and hate about this chapter is that the first few turns will have your Miller's Turn Wheel, your Divine Pulse, whatever you want to call it. It'll have it just completely disabled, as Veyle has just yoinked it from your inventory. Now, from a ludonarrative perspective, this is really, really cool. Just having a gameplay mechanic completely snatched away from you really makes you feel like all of your decisions matter, since you don't have an undo or a change RN button at all at your disposal. It's really, really cool. I really like it. From a gameplay perspective, I hate it. I really fucking hate having this, because like I said, Turn Wheel for me, and I feel like Turn Wheel for a lot of people, isn't so much, oh, I need to redo this turn all over again. It's oh, I accidentally ended turn. Okay, let me just Turn Wheel that. Like, it's an undo button for me most of the time, because I make a lot of, like, just quick mistakes. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to position Vander there, or oh, I didn't mean to position Fram, or I didn't mean to heal with Fram. I meant to chain guard with Fram. Stuff like that. So very cool from a flavor perspective, not so great from a gameplay perspective, but we'll get more into that later. Anyway, Engage doesn't have a good story. Like, I'm not even gonna, like, try and defend a game that I actually do really, really like. I used to be pretty, like, so-so. I was pretty lukewarm on Engage when it came out, and then for the next couple of years, God, it's been out for like 2 years at this point. Like, for the next couple of years, I was like, I don't really want to play Engage. Like, I could play through Radiant Dawn again. Unga bunga game, I know. And then, like, as of the past few months, I've been grinding that shit like crazy. Just for some reason. I don't know why. I just got a random, like, hyper craving for it. And I've really, like, come around on Engage. I really, really fucking like that game now. It's probably, like, a top 5 Fire Emblem for me. That being said, I will not defend its plot. Its plot is, like, completely awful. Like, only surpassed by, like, Conquest, and that's about it. So, I'm not going to try and pretend it's any better than, like, your average Saturday morning cartoon plot. But the fact that it has a chapter that genuinely manages to portray some serious emotion and a great sense of hopelessness in an otherwise, like, hyper-goofy game is, like, applaudable. That's really good. Off the top of my head, I'd probably say that the majority of chapters in Engage would probably fail on flavor, just because there isn't that much, like, of a basis for flavor, so to say. So the fact that this one succeeds and then some is rather refreshing. I'll give this one a big old pass. Now moving on to Objective. Escape, my beloved. Okay, if we're being completely honest, it's not really escape. It's not, like, actually an escape objective. It's more like arriving with Aaliyah or seizing. Because, in my eyes, escape will always be, like, Thracia-style escape, in which literally everyone has to make it to the escape point. Every single one of your deployed units must escape before your lord. To me, that's, like, the true form of escape. So, if all you really need to do for your escape objective is to just reach the escape point with your lord, that's not really escape, let's be honest, it's just seize with a different bit of text. All that being said, even if you interpret this as a seize chapter, it is very much still presented as an escape chapter, which I do genuinely love. Escape to me is always an interesting objective, because the number one thing that the game will tell you with escape is that you need to play quick. If you are not constantly moving your units towards that escape point, bad shit is going to happen. Be it through overwhelming reinforcements, new bosses appearing, or whatever, you gotta keep moving. And the game does a really, really good job of presenting this fact to you constantly, through a bunch of different means. The main one is through the Freeze Monk that you will likely see from the start of the map, which is arguably the single most dangerous enemy on the entire map. It's just that little monk guy, that little monk lady/guy, don't know the gender, whatever, and they are holding a freeze staff. But more importantly, they are equipped with the Makai ring, which, if you're unfamiliar with Engage, is arguably the most busted ring in the entire game, in a game with a lot of busted mechanics. Now, since their freeze staff is hyper long range and AoE, you have to make sure that your units aren't getting left too far behind, otherwise they're probably just going to get murdered by enemies like the Worms and the Sigurd Ring goobers. And the Freeze Monk is positioned in such a way that you can't just, like, send, oh, I'll just send, like, an invested Chloe up to go kill them really quick, and then they can canto out. No, they're positioned very, like, closely to Veyle, so, yeah, good luck killing them. Yeah, this chapter, Like, it's an escape map, and it's a quite simple escape map. It is very much just move from point A to point B, but that's completely fine. That is arguably what an escape map should be. Just with, like, this great sense of tension. Like, there should be a sense of tension rising as the enemy basically gets stronger throughout the map. Like, the ideal situation for an escape map is the enemy is only getting stronger, while your forces are only dwindling. The feeling you should have at the end of an escape map should be different to, like, a siege map. Like, a siege map will give you the feeling of, woo, we did it! Whereas escape is, thank fuck we made it out. Now, there is kind of a lack of side objectives on the map, but honestly, that's fine. I wouldn't really add anything too extraneous if I had the option, honestly. Chests absolutely don't belong on this map, and the only thing that could, like, maybe improve it would be, like, some droppable items from out-of-the-way enemies. Like, I really like the Tomahawk fighter towards the end of the map that's hidden in the forest, but it's a pretty, like, minor gripe I have with the map. It's not really that important. The entire point of the chapter is to retreat from the enemy. It's literally the name of the chapter, so your entire focus should just be on running, clearing a path for your army, and staying alive, which the chapter does extremely effectively. Very happy to give this a pass. The objective is done really, really nicely. And now we have to move on to the big old can of worms that is replayability, which I will say, as for all the maps we've done so far, this one probably does replayability the best. I'll say that right away. But it is still kind of a mixed bag. But that's also just mostly due to the chapter's difficulty, which we will get into more with the category. So I'll just start by saying that I do legitimately enjoy replaying this chapter for a couple of different reasons. The first being that I am obviously engage biased, engage is peak. I am engage based and not three houses cringe. And there's like 2, maybe 3 chapters in the game that I legitimately don't like. As for the second point, I think Retreat does have some genuine replayability, like some legitimate reasons to think, oh cool, Retreat is coming up. Predominantly due to the fact that this is a 2-part chapter, meaning that you are forced to deploy the exact same squad of units that you deployed from the previous chapter. So you can't just completely trivialize this chapter by bringing exclusively like high mobility units like Cavs or Flyers, which is great. You are forced to make do with the units that you have brought from the previous chapter, which will likely mean that you'll have a bunch of characters that simply aren't suited to this style of chapter. Like, every time I've brought a unit like Luis onto this map, he is nothing but a liability, because Luis is really, really good at taking hits and dealing a good chunk of damage and, like, doing all the good things that an Arm Knight would do. That doesn't matter here. You need to move fast. Your Great Bulk doesn't matter when the entire, like, foundation of the chapter isn't blocking a choke or tanking damage. It's about running the fuck away, which Luis will be really bad at. Like, most of your 4-move units will be a liability on this chapter. It is really up to your promoted units to shine, which I like. Now, it might be kind of a personal thing, but I always tend to build my army specifically for Chapter 10 rather than 11, and you absolutely could just, like, bring a squad of units into Chapter 10, built for Chapter 11, but I prefer just doing it the way I do. I really like just being forced to improvise with whatever tools I've been given, rather than just using, like, the arguably correct death squad to just completely sweep through Chapter 11. This makes, like, an otherwise potentially samey chapter into something that I'll actually give a pass to, I think. I think this chapter actually succeeds on replayability, purely just because of the sense of improvisation and, like, having to make do with what you have. Like, it makes it interesting just being forced to, like, think, okay, how do I get out of this situation with these very inefficient units? It's cool. I like it. We finally did it! A chapter with good replayability. We made it, people. The promised land is here. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the difficulty. This is going to be the most contentious category for me, is the difficulty. Oh, good old pal D. I feel this chapter actually really, really struggles with maintaining a consistent level of difficulty. What I mean by this is, the chapter is likely going to be very difficult the first time you play it, as the game will catch you off guard by taking away so many of your valuable resources, just pretty much they'll telegraph, like, before you go into Chapter 10, Martha will be like, I don't know about this Destiny Cathedral, this seems like a bad idea, and then Liz like, don't care, doing it. And then Chapter 11 will be like, oh, all my rings are gone. Probably should have listened to Marth. Like, they tell you a bit, but what they actually do is pretty, like, significant, so you probably won't be very prepared for having all of your rings taken away. In fact, the most severe blow this can deal to the player is likely through just taking away the Micaiah ring, as on your first playthrough, you're probably just going to be using, like, one regular healer, like your Fram, and then you'll equip the Micaiah ring to, like, or, like, you'll just leave Micaiah ring on Yunaka for a second healer. Which works completely fine up to that point, since 2 healers is, like, plenty of healing. But when you start Retreat, you're quickly going to realize that you are down a staff user, and more importantly, you're down a potential restore user. So if you do get hit by the AoE freeze, just one restore user ain't gonna cut it. It's gonna, like, genuinely hinder your army. And to add to potential frustration, you could also be using a bunch of low mobility units, like I mentioned earlier, i.e. the unpromoted units who are still on 4 move, like your Luises and your Lapises and your Etiers. And this paired with the large amounts of water and forest that you have to wade through can create an immense feeling of pressure for the player. And the fact that you don't have the ability to rewind via the turn wheel can turn this otherwise like interesting pressure into just plain old frustration. True to its objective and its inspiration, this can feel like a Thracia map. It's very much inspired by Thracia. It is designed to feel like a Thracia map, which also means that if you're playing it blind, chances are you're going to be playing it wrong. I've always maintained the opinion that if you're playing Thracia for the first time, do not play that shit blind. Fucking cheat, because the game's going to cheat as well. But on the other hand, when you pass through Chapter 11 on a subsequent playthrough, the rabbit is already out of the hat, so to say. Like, you already know exactly what you need to eliminate the potential threats on the map, that being staff users, high mobility units, and giving Canter to all your units because Insys didn't think and skill inheritance through. Seriously, just having Canter on like half of your units can turn this chapter into an absolute joke. So instead of having this really consistently like tough and mechanically interesting and deep chapter that is constantly testing your tactical limits, it more just feels like a checklist of things to deal with at the start of the chapter, i.e. stay away from the AoE freeze user and the worms and such, and deal with the Sigurd guy when he comes up. And after that, it's mostly really straightforward. So it's only really going to be like actually difficult on your first time through, and then every time after that, it's like, I'd argue one of the easiest chapters in the game. It's actually very simple once you get past the start. It's unfortunate, but I don't think it really succeeds. I just don't think the consistent level of difficulty is there, and I think the first time through, when it is going to be difficult, it can also be super, super frustrating. It's a really good, like, spectacle chapter for your first playthrough. Like, it does a great job through flavor and the objective and whatnot, and, like, catching you off guard. But after that, it really just doesn't offer that much. Sorry to say. Unfortunate, but I'm gonna give this one a fail for difficulty. And our final category, enjoyability. Again, a little bit of a tricky one, but I think I'd give it a pass overall. The chapter definitely offers enough variety and things to keep track of, with stuff like enemy ranges and status staves and an objective that you do need to constantly be moving towards. You do have to constantly keep track of it. So I do legitimately feel engaged when playing this chapter. Like, in my eyes, if a map is making me constantly check enemy ranges, the map is doing something well in terms of enjoyability. I am being stimulated by having to constantly check that either I am baiting enemies correctly with the correct units, or I am staying the fuck away from the AoE freeze user, El Diablo, sin be his name. Like I said, the chapter doesn't really challenge me personally that much anymore, but that's probably more of a personal bias since I've played through Engage so many times at this point, and experience just kind of obliterates the difficulty overall. So that isn't exactly fair. So for a lot of people, I feel like the chapter will still have a very good level of difficulty overall. I also kind of dig the fact that the chapter isn't that long. Like, I feel like on average it's probably going to be like a 6 to 8 turn chapter, maybe like earing on the edge of like 10 turns if you take it a little bit slower. It's somewhat refreshing. It feels like a good palate cleanser. Okay, it's not really a good palate cleanser because of the flavor of the map, and it's very like, oh, all hope is like, it's an all hope is lost chapter. It's the protagonist's lowest point in the story, basically, other than literally dying in chapter 21. Spoilers. Like, chapter 12 is designed to be the palate cleanser map because that is very much a filler map. But in terms of like chapter length, it's kind of refreshing after chapter 10 because chapter 10's a really chunky chapter. It's like a 20 turn chapter. It's effectively like a 2-part chapter. Like, you got to deal with the Hortensia part and then the I can't remember the fucking Illusia guy's name. What is his name? I'm not looking that up. Post it in the comments. That's really gonna bother me. First person to comment Hortensia and Ivy's father's name will receive exactly 1 point, and that 1 point will go on their record. Points are good. You want them. Fuck is his name? I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, I feel like it just works really nicely as a good, a nice quick chapter after like a chapter, a chapter that you probably had to take a break from afterwards. Short chapters can be very underrated in Fire Emblem. It's kind of like easy to make a long chapter just by continually adding shit, but I feel like making a satisfying short chapter in Fire Emblem is actually quite difficult because you need to like have a good amount of substance available. Otherwise, the short chapter can just feel kind of nothingy. But yeah, other than that, there's not really that much else to say. It's just a fun chapter that tries to do something different compared to a lot of the other kinda samey chapters in Engage. So I just appreciate it for what it is. It does a lot of things just really well. Like, it is reasonably challenging. It's got an interesting objective. I feel like I'm having fun when playing. And that's gonna be all she wrote for this episode. I'm gonna rank this chapter as good. rather than underrated or something similar. I think it's pretty, like, well regarded in the community at this point, having a bunch of really, like, well executed features, a good level of difficulty, even if I kind of disagree with that, and an interesting objective, as well as maybe being the only engage map where I feel an emotion, other than just laughing at how obscenely silly it is. So that's gotta count for something, right? Like Chapter 11's, it's a pretty good map. It's probably like a top 5 map in Engage. Well, maybe not top 5 map. Engage has a lot of really good maps. I actually am looking forward to talking about Engage late game. I think Engage late game's really, really good. My voice is kind of dying at this point, so I need to wrap this up. So let's just go ahead and move on to the most important part of all. Next week's episode will be a rather, like, simple one. Probably, like, quite a short episode, as they all can't be, like, flavor explosions, so to say. But for its anagram, listen closely, as it is none other than Fencers Pro Bins. For those in the back, Fencers Pro Bins. Alright, that's all for me this week. I will catch you guys next week. Have a grand old time, everyone. I'll catch you next time.